At first glance, the land looked peaceful, a quiet stretch of farmland where the soil had fed generations and the crops once grew undisturbed. But beneath that calm surface, a silent war was already underway. This was no ordinary farm problem. This was an invasion. Night after night, wild boars poured out of the darkness. Not one or two, but entire herds. They moved like a living machine, tearing through crops with brutal efficiency. Fields that took months to grow were destroyed in minutes. Deep trenches scarred the land where roots had been ripped apart. Fences bent. Irrigation lines snapped. The damage wasn't random, it was systematic. And the farmer knew something chilling. These boars weren't careless. They were learning. Traditional traps had failed. Guns scared them away for a night, maybe two. The survivors came back smarter, more cautious, avoiding every danger they'd seen before. This wasn't just a pest problem anymore. It was an intelligent enemy adapting with every encounter. Then something changed. One evening, while inspecting the damage, the farmer noticed a pattern. The boars weren't spreading out randomly. They followed the same paths, same entry points, same escape routes. Night after night, the herds moved like clockwork, using the land's natural slopes and soft soil to their advantage. That's when the idea formed. Not a trap, a terrain weapon. Instead of trying to stop the boars, the farmer decided to guide them. He studied how water flowed after rain, how the ground softened near the crop lines, how the boars lower their heads and charge forward without looking down when panic hit. And then he began digging. Not a shallow ditch, not something obvious. This trench was wide, deep, carefully hidden. The soil was shaped to look untouched, blending perfectly into the farmland. From a distance, and even up close, it looked like solid ground. Bait was placed strategically, not inside a cage, not near metal, just where the boars already wanted to go. The first herd arrived just after midnight. You could hear them before you saw them. Heavy breathing, the low grunts, the sound of hooves tearing into soil. They moved confidently, unaware that the ground beneath their path had been turned into a silent trap. Then it happened. The lead boar charged forward and vanished. In seconds, panic exploded. The rest of the herd surged blindly ahead, following instinct instead of caution. One by one, massive bodies fell into the ditch. Tusks clashed. Dirt rained down. The escape route they trusted had betrayed them. But the night wasn't over, because somewhere beyond the field, another herd was already on the move, and they were heading straight toward the same trap. The first herd was trapped, but the night was far from over. From the edge of the field, the farmer watched in silence. The ditch was doing exactly what it was designed to do. Inside the trench, massive wild boars thrashed violently, crashing into one another, their panic growing with every failed attempt to climb out. The walls were too steep, the soil too loose. Every movement only dragged them deeper. Normally, this would have been the end of it. But something far more dangerous was coming. Deep in the forest line, another sound began to rise. A low, rolling echo of movement. Branches snapping, leaves crushing under heavy weight. A second herd, larger, faster, and completely unaware of what waited ahead. The farmer felt a knot tighten in his chest. 2 herds in one night was rare. And when wild boars gather in numbers like this, chaos follows. If the second herd panicked early, they could scatter into nearby farms, or worse, into nearby villages. The boars burst from the tree line like a black wave. Dozens of bodies surged forward, driven by hunger and instinct. They smelled the crops. They smelled the soil torn open by the first herd. To them, it meant opportunity, not danger. At the last moment, a few of the leading boars sensed something was wrong. They slowed, snorted, stamped the ground. But pressure from behind pushed them forward. Once momentum took over, there was no stopping it. The ground collapsed beneath them. The ditch claimed its second herd. Boars fell on top of boars. The sound was deafening. Squeals, heavy impacts, tusks scraping against dirt and stone. Some tried to leap back, but the edge crumbled under their weight. Others charged blindly forward, only to crash into trapped animals below. This was the moment the farmer had prepared for. Lights flicked on across the field, flooding the darkness. From elevated positions, the team moved into place. Every movement was calculated. No shouting, no rushing. A trapped wild boar is at its most dangerous, capable of sudden explosive force. The animals fought desperately, but the ditch had removed their greatest weapon, speed. One by one, the boars were controlled. The farmer watched closely, noting something unsettling. Even trapped, some boars tried to coordinate, pushing smaller ones forward, testing weak points in the soil. They were still thinking. Hours passed before the field finally grew quiet. 2 entire herds stopped without a single shot fired. What guns and traps had failed to do for months, terrain and patience had accomplished in one night. But as dawn crept over the horizon, the farmer knew this victory came with a warning. Wild boars were no longer just destroying crops. They were evolving. And next time, they might not fall for the same trick. Morning light revealed the true scale of what had happened overnight. As the fog slowly lifted from the fields, the ditch stood exposed, deep, wide, and filled with the silent weight of destruction. 2 entire herds of wild boars had been neutralized in a single operation. For months, these animals had torn through crops, destroyed irrigation lines, and pushed farmers to the edge of desperation. Now, the land was quiet, almost unnervingly so. But victory didn't feel complete. The farmer walked the edge of the trench carefully, studying every detail. Broken soil, deep claw marks, tusks embedded into compacted earth. Some boars had tried to climb over others, using sheer force and coordination. This wasn't random behavior. It was adaptation. Wild boars were learning. In recent years, their numbers had exploded. With fewer natural predators and vast farmland offering endless food, they had grown larger, stronger, and far more aggressive. Traps that once worked failed within weeks. Gunfire only scattered them temporarily. Night hunts pushed them deeper into forests, only for them to return smarter and angrier. This ditch was different. It attacked their confidence. By removing speed and momentum, it turned their greatest advantage into their downfall. But the farmer knew one harsh truth. This solution wasn't permanent. Word spreads fast in the wild, not through language, but through survival patterns. The boars that escaped tonight would remember. They would hesitate next time, circle wider, test the ground more carefully. And next time, they might come in even greater numbers. Authorities arrived later that day, documenting the scene. The count stunned everyone. What had started as a defensive measure turned into one of the most effective wild boar control operations the region had ever seen. Yet even officials admitted this was only a temporary relief. Across the countryside, similar stories were unfolding. Farms abandoned, roads damaged, vehicles struck at night. Wild boars were no longer a rural problem. They were becoming a national threat. As the sun climbed higher, a farmer filled in part of the ditch, deliberately leaving sections intact. This land had become a battlefield, and abandoning defenses now would be a mistake. New strategies were already forming in his mind. Deeper trenches, false paths, layered traps that punished hesitation as much as speed. This was no longer about protecting crops alone. It was about survival. Because wild boars don't stop. They test. They adapt. They return. And while this night proved that intelligence could still beat brute force, it also sent a clear warning to every farmer watching from afar. The fight against wild boars isn't won in a single night. It's an ongoing war, one that demands patience, planning, and the willingness to stay one step ahead of an enemy that's learning fast. And somewhere beyond the tree line, unseen eyes were already watching, waiting for the next mistake.